When it came to black achievements, those white guys just couldn't hold back and started insulting Imani. And then she snapped and responded to their insults by, "This happened 2 weeks ago. And if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I'd say it was straight out of a movie. I'm talking about a packed college auditorium, a confident black woman with a mic, and 3 white boys who thought heckling her mid-presentation was a smart move. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Her name was Imani Grant, 21 senior, political science major with a minor in history. She didn't just walk into a room, she stepped into it. Tall, head high, with braids that swung past her back and eyes that made you sit up a little straighter when she looked your way. That day, she was speaking at a campus symposium. Topic: African empires and their global legacy. Now let me say this, Imani came prepared. Not just with slides, not just with notes. She walked onto that stage with receipts, names, dates, timelines, quotes, archaeological sources, and she delivered it all like a woman who knew damn well her ancestors built more than pyramids. They built empires. She was 10 minutes into her presentation, breaking down the rise of the Mali Empire, Sundiata Keita, the consolidation of trade routes, cultural diplomacy, when it started. First a snicker, then a cough that turned into an exaggerated yawn, then the voice, white, male, southern twang, fake, confused. Wait, hold up. Are we supposed to believe Africa had real empires? The room froze for a second. Imani looked up, calm. Excuse me? Another voice jumped in, his buddy, blonde, cargo shorts, that smug frat energy. No offense, but we didn't come here to listen to fairy tales about some jungle kings. There were murmurs across the crowd. Some folks shook their heads. A few laughed, nervous or just ignorant, who knows. Imani? She didn't flinch. She stepped away from the podium and said, "Would you like to ask a specific question? Or just keep embarrassing yourself in vague sentences?" That got a little laugh from the front row, but the boys doubled down. Frat boy number 1, still smirking. "We're just saying, if those empires were so great, why aren't they here now? Why is Africa so poor? What happened to all that royalty, huh?" I swear to you, Imani didn't blink. She smiled, the kind of smile that says, "I've been waiting for this." And then she went in. She said, "Let's talk about why those empires aren't here. Mali, Ghana, Songhai, wealthier than most of Europe during their prime. You ever hear of Mansa Musa, richest man in human history? Adjusted for inflation, he makes Jeff Bezos look unemployed." The boys laughed again, louder this time. "Sounds made up," Imani fired back. "Oh, but you believe in Christopher Columbus? A man who never set foot on U.S. soil and still managed to get a whole day named after him?" The crowd started shifting. She went on, voice rising just enough to make sure every row heard her. "You want to know why those empires fell? Colonialism, European interference, intentional economic destabilization. Go look up the scramble for Africa. Belgium, France, Britain. They weren't exploring, they were looting." One of the guys tried to cut her off. "Okay, but slavery," she raised a hand. "No, you don't get to bring up slavery like it was some passive accident. It was organized, financed, protected by Western governments for centuries. You don't get to ask, why is Africa poor when your ancestors made it that way?" Now the auditorium was dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop under the weight of that truth. Imani looked them straight in the eye. "If y'all came here to clown, you picked the wrong day. I'm not just talking about Africa's greatness. I'm talking about how the world pretends it never existed. So people like you can stay comfortable thinking black means backward." They didn't laugh this time. They didn't say anything. They just sat there, red in the face, arms crossed, sinking into their chairs like the floor might swallow them if they got lucky. Imani turned back to the podium like nothing happened. Now, as I was saying, she picked up her notes and continued her talk like those fools never existed. Imani didn't skip a beat after shutting them down. She went right back into her presentation like it was just another Tuesday. And honestly, that's what made it even colder. She didn't argue. She educated, She didn't rant. She exposed. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. And the room? The same crowd that was squirming a minute ago now hung on every word. She broke down the administrative structure of the Kingdom of Kush, the economic systems of Great Zimbabwe, how trade with Asia and the Middle East predated European contact by centuries. She backed every point with citations, slide after slide of actual archaeological sites, ancient manuscripts, maps. She even quoted a few white historians just for sport. By the time she wrapped up, the auditorium wasn't just impressed. They were silent. Not because they didn't care, but because they were processing what just happened. The panel moderator stood up to thank her, voice a little shaky. Thank you, Miss Grant. That was outstanding." Before she could step off stage, someone started clapping. Then another, and suddenly the whole auditorium was on its feet. Standing ovation. Loud, full, real. Even a few professors in the back, who definitely heard the heckling but stayed quiet. Yeah, they were clapping too now. But the best part? Those three white boys? Still glued to their seats. Mouths shut, eyes low. No jokes now, no smirks. Just heat in their cheeks and the weight of everyone knowing they got cooked in front of 300 people. And it wasn't just the audience that noticed. That night, at the end of the symposium, they gave out a small number of faculty commendations. Special recognition for excellence in academic presentation and contribution. Guess whose name got called first? Imani Grant. When she walked up to accept her award, she didn't gloat. She didn't look at the boys. She didn't need to. She just smiled, held the certificate, and stood there like she was made of iron and history and 1,000 voices that came before her. Afterwards, people came up one by one. Other students, professors, even some of the custodial staff who'd watched from the hallway. One girl, sophomore, almost in tears, said, "Thank you for saying what we all think but never say out loud." Another student, a Nigerian dude from the engineering department, shook her hand and said, "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the Benin Empire. You just brought all of that back to life." Even the moderator came over, awkwardly trying to apologize on behalf of a few immature voices. Imani simply said, "The immaturity isn't the problem, it's the silence from people who should know better." And then she walked away, because Imani didn't come to play respectability games. She came to speak truth, and truth doesn't beg for applause. But you better believe she got it. In the following days, the video circulated. Yeah, someone did record it. And no, it wasn't the boys. It was one of the organizers in the front row who captured the entire exchange. And once it hit social media, let's just say, folks felt it. The caption read, "She just ended white fragility in real time. Watch this." Thousands of shares, dozens of professors resharing it with captions like, "This is why we need more Imanis." And Black students from other schools commenting, "We need her on our campus." The boys? They tried to stay low, but campus isn't that big. Eventually, one of them was removed from the Student Leadership Council. Another got dropped from his frat's exec board. Not because of cancel culture, but because people had receipts now, and receipts don't lie. Meanwhile, Imani didn't say much. She went back to her routine, back to her studies, back to the quiet fire that built her in the first place. But when she passed people on campus, heads nodded, hands were raised, and even people who didn't know her respected her. Because what happened in that auditorium wasn't just a mic drop, it was a blueprint, a reminder that when you know your history, when you've done the work, when you refuse to be broken, no amount of heckling, no dusty stereotypes, no fragile egos can stand against you. Imani didn't just defend Black history, she made some. Let's be honest, what Imani faced in that auditorium wasn't new. That kind of ignorance dressed up as debate, it's been around forever. What's new is the fact that this time, someone like her didn't just endure it. She stood in the fire, eyes open, voice steady, and burned it all to the ground. Because it's always the same playbook, isn't it? They interrupt us. They laugh at our pain. They call our facts aggressive, our truth divisive, our tone too emotional. And our brilliance? They call that arrogance. But when a white kid screams about some theory he half-read on Reddit, they call him passionate. They call it academic discourse. They call it rigor. See the double standard? They love history when it's about Europe. They love courage when it's colonial. They love royalty when it's wearing powdered wigs. But tell them about African empires, and suddenly it's myth. Tell them about reparations, and suddenly it's playing the victim. Tell them about institutional theft, about genocide, about stolen wealth and stolen names, and suddenly they want to talk about reverse racism. But not that day, not in that auditorium, because Imani didn't flinch. She didn't dial herself down to make them comfortable. She didn't wrap her rage in pleasantries or wait her turn to be respected. She knew what so many of us were taught to forget, that our history is not up for debate, that our voice is not a moment, it's a movement. And that day, she reminded every black student in that room of their power. She reminded every white student of the cracks in the stories they were raised on. And she reminded the world that we are done asking for permission to be heard. Because when you come for one of us thinking we're unprepared, you might just walk away with a lesson your ancestors never taught you.